Hey, welcome to X Vintage Tech. Now, when most people think back to powerful Pentium 3 systems made by Gateway, this tower is what comes to mind. Now, most people didn't even know this was a thing. This is a dual Pentium 3 1000 megahertz with 4 gig of RAM Gateway server. Now, any of you that did a search for Gateway server and found my video and you're looking for networking, stay tuned anyways. Welcome back. If you're a company in the early 2000s and you were looking for a server for your business and you happen to have a rack space for one, this was one of your options. This is the Gateway 7450R rack mount server. This server has two Pentium 3 processors running at 1000 megahertz, ultra SCSI 320 with 3 hard drives in the front and 4 gig of RAM. But enough talking about the specs, let's get this thing open and take a look inside. In order to open it, there were 2 screws in the front here. Once you take those off, it slides right open. Now, I did leave the top of this as dirty as I got it. This thing was black on the inside. It looked like it was part of a coal mine operation. I did clean the rest out. I just wanted to kind of keep that as an example of what it was. All right, now that I got it slotted up, you can see the 2 processors, your 4 gig of RAM. You have 2 PCI X slots in here, one being taken up by the RAID controller card and the other for whatever you need. It will accept standard PCI 2 cards, so that's nice if you want to add sound, video, whatever. It does not have a sound card. There was no need for a sound card back then. There is a PC speaker on this thing, but it's just the little BIOS beeps and chirps that you would normally hear during startup. It does have an IDE controller on it, mainly for the CD-ROM, but if you wanted to put a different hard drive in here, you could, if you could fit it in. What I do plan on doing is I have this newer SAS RAID card that's PCI X, and I plan on putting this in here if I can modify the backplane or remove the backplane of the hard drives and find one that fits. Then I could put SAS drives in this thing, and that would be great because then I could put a small SSD in here and run 3 newer SATA hard drives in there or SAS, and have a lot more storage for what I plan on using this thing for. Now, the only other thing I didn't go over here is the power supply. It's got a 200 watt power supply. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you're really not running a lot in this thing. There's only 3 hard drives, CD-ROM, floppy drive. There's no massive GPU in here. You're not doing anything like that. Now, I did try playing Quake 3 on this thing, and on the onboard video, it was atrocious. I do have this ATI Rage 128 card with 32 mega RAM. I think I'm going to slap that in here and see what it does. To get that in here, you just remove the little plate, and then your PCI slot pops right off. Even though it's a PCI X slot, it will accept standard PCI cards. Not PCIe, obviously, that's a different slot altogether, but it will take it. Now that I got the video card in, I do want to put new thermal paste on the CPU blocks. They are very old, so I don't believe they've ever been replaced. So I do want to put new thermal paste on that. As you can see, the fans here are very large and very loud. You're going to see that in a minute as well. Now, with these 2 PCI X slots, I only have the option for the RAID card that I need because that's where the hard drives are attached to, and whatever else I want to put in here. Now, to see what Quake can do, yeah, I'll put a video card in here, but that's not going to stay in there. Realistically, I am going to eventually put the PCI X SAS card in there, put SAS drives in this thing if I can find a backplane that'll fit, or custom build one on PCBWay or whatever. Now, the other thing is I can't put sound in here because I'm using my card. Now, the other option I could do is I would be able to put sound through USB. There are no USB ports on the back at all, so you have the one USB in the front. There is a header on the inside here, and you could possibly branch off of this, put a couple ports in the back here, small cheap hub, run up to the front. That's really, it's not a gaming machine. I'm just seeing what it's capable of. Primarily, this is going to be my actual vintage NAS server that I have deployed on my network. I've built other NAS servers in the past for vintage stuff. And now that I got this server, this is what I want to use primarily as my actual vintage NAS. One other thing I will be installing is this gigabit network card. If I'm transferring large files over my network, some of them being over a gigabyte, especially if it's DVD images of operating systems, stuff like that. It might take a very long time to do that over a 10100. So this is just going to make life much easier, and it is a server. It might be able to play games, and that's what we're going to check out, but primarily the goal for this thing is to become a server. And if it's going to be a server, it's going to need server things, not so much video cards. But I am curious to see how well it can run Quake 3 Arena. But before I do that, let's get that thermal paste on there because it is going to get hot. All right, in order to get these CPUs off, it's pretty simple. There's a little clip here. It just pops right off. It's so easy on this thing. I've tried it with modern processors that I've had harder time with. So that is something I'm very happy that was easy to do. I didn't cut myself. So this one should pop off easy because I've already had it off to take a look at how dry this stuff was. It looks like they just put a square pad on here. I'm going to put actual thermal paste on. There is no lid on the die either. It is straight to the die. There is no room for error there. This other one came off just as easy. It's a little heavier, mainly because the air is coming through the first CPU and then going to the second CPU. So the second CPU in that line needs to have a bigger heat sink because it's already getting warm air pushed through it. Now that I got the two heat sinks off, let's just pop one of these CPUs out and see what it looks like. This processor uses a pin grid array as opposed to the newer CPUs that have all the pins on the motherboard and only pads on the CPU. When you put these back on, you're going to see that the two corners here don't have pins installed on the very edge. So that tells you exactly what orientation you want to put it back into. You do want to be careful. If there's any resistance on the thing, don't push. You will break it. So once you get it seated in there firmly, clicks right in. Nice and easy. Now we're going to grab our isopropyl alcohol pad and clean off the old thermal paste. Now I've said it before in my other video, I fly United a lot. Take all the alcohol prep pads that they'll give you. It just, makes life a little easier for when you're doing this type of work. That old thermal paste came off pretty easy. So let's put a little bit of paste on these. Just a dab is all you need. Now that we got the thermal paste on there, you do want to make sure that you're putting these on correctly. Now on modern servers, it's very easy to get confused which way they go because they will click in anyway. Now on this server, you have the center retaining clip, which at least keeps you going front to back on the fins. That's the most important thing. You want to make sure that the fins are going the same direction as the airflow. There's also a little groove on the bottom here that you want to make sure goes on over the plastic of the CPU slot. Once it's on there, it should just kind of feel like it clicks right into place. Do the same on the rear processor as well. And that too just kind of falls into place. Get your retaining clips back. All right, that was fairly easy. Let's do the second one. Now that wasn't too hard, but I did feel if I slipped, I would have been cut wide open by those fins because my finger was kind of sliding right along the edge there. So you do want to be careful with that. Check for any bent fins. I got one there that was slightly mushed. I don't know if I did that or it was always like that. But you want to make sure that you get good clean airflow out of these things. Now that that's done, let's see how Quake looks. All right, now that I got everything together, let's go ahead and get it booted up. Now this thing is going to be loud, so hopefully the microphone still picks up my voice clear. And it is going to take a long time to boot because it has to check all that RAM. So I'm going to go ahead and start a timer here, and we'll see how it goes. All right, we are about halfway through the RAM check, and it's been about 1.5 minutes to give you an idea how long this thing just takes to boot. All right, so it finished checking all the RAM. We were at about 2 minutes and 40 seconds when that happened. Now, it does still have to check all the SCSI RAID adapters, so that's an additional amount of time. All right, we are finally booting into Windows XP after about 3.5 minutes. Now, because of the new video card, it might take a little bit longer as it installs drivers in the background at boot, but we're typically looking at about a 3.5 to 4 minute boot every time you have to reboot this thing. So for some reason, I have a disk check now. The only thing I did before this was some Windows updates to make sure drivers were good, so hopefully nothing is wrong. Please wait while your computer restarts. So 3.5 more minutes at least. Alright, so that took a lot more than 4 minutes it felt, with multiple reboots after that check disk. So with the magic of editing, here we are. And from what it looks like, I might have to install the video drivers, but we'll see. That might be another reboot. Alright, after a very long night of many reboots, I lost count, many 4-minute reboots, trying different video drivers, trying different installs. Quake just doesn't like to run on this thing with this video card. I don't really have another PCI video card that would be worth putting in here because the onboard video card is more powerful than any of the other older PCI cards I got right now. So I'm going to call it. Quake 3 does not like to run on this thing. You know, it's a limitation of the hardware, but it's not what I'm using it for. Let me shut down here so you can actually hear me. Alright, now that I got that shut down and you can actually hear me, Quake 3 really wasn't in the end game for this thing, no pun intended. The thing I'm going to actually be using it for is a FreeNAS server, specifically FreeNAS 9219, I believe. It's the last version of FreeNAS that supports Pentium 3 processors. So I'm going to be installing that along with eventually doing like a SAS drive upgrade, stuff like that. But that's the main focus for this computer here, is to get FreeNAS on there and run my actual vintage server that's going to be in my rack. That way, whenever I boot up a new system, some of the systems I have don't even have CD-ROMs installed, so if I wanted to install something over the network, I could easily connect an older operating system to my vintage NAS, running that version of FreeNAS, and then using something like Clone CD Virtual Drive, I could mount the ISO as an actual CD-ROM virtually, and then get the data over that I need. You can't really do that with my newer NAS. It just doesn't have the older protocols, mainly for security, that all my vintage machines need. So having an older NAS running something like FreeNAS is perfect because it will work with all the stuff I have going back to the early Macs, I believe. Anything basically with an Ethernet card will work as long as it supports either Apple Share or Apple Talk or SMB. So that will be what I end up using this for. I'm a little tired now as compared to earlier in the video. I probably have a little bit more 5 o'clock shadow because I spent a lot more time than I should have trying to get a game to work on here just to see what it could do. It didn't do anything. So I'm going to say that's it for this video. I wish it could have been a little bit more to show, but the real star here is this vintage machine that is pretty rare. I've never actually seen one until I picked this one up, and I used to work at Gateway, so I've never actually seen a Gateway rack mount server until I found this one at my local e-waste. $20 too, so I really got lucky with this thing. It's going to be put to good use, and I'm very happy that I have it. Hope you like the channel, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you could have done possibly to get Quake running on here. I'm curious because maybe I just got too tired and, you know, I didn't want to troubleshoot any longer. So let me know in the comments what you guys would have done or what else you would use a vintage server like this for. Thank you very much. Take care.